Well, hello everyone, and welcome back. I guess today I'm going to try to be a little less serious, a little more, I don't know, something fun that I like to think about. Another one of those things that I don't necessarily really believe a lot of what's going on in there, but I like to reside in that space between what can exist and what does exist. I like pondering in that world, right? Because what's the point of pondering what we already know, right? Like we already know it. That's just facts. So there's no need to think about that. I also find it to be a waste of time to think about things that I don't think are possible. But anything that I think could be possible, I think that's fair game to think about. And I think what makes that interesting is that's how we'll think of new ways to look for these things, or that's how we may discover these things. So today I'm kind of actually interested in alien life, and not even necessarily from like a conspiratorial. Like I can get into that. I do enjoy some of the thinking about like that, but I'm more concerned with like the what is the practical reality? Where is the likely space that aliens might exist, or what would alien life like what things do we know about alien life? What box can we build around this concept, I guess, is what I'm probably going to focus on. But first, it's like we have a range on this planet of everybody ever since like the X-Files, right? I want to believe. I'm one of those. I want to believe. I want it to be real. I want there to be aliens. I guess I guess part of that is I just feel better if we weren't the only things running the show. I want something that's like more advanced than us, that has figured out our problems, and one day could show up and spank us into being better adults. But that's kind of a wild fantasy of mine. I don't think that that's going to happen. I don't know that there's ever going to be any true concept of alien visitation. I don't know that I even have a clarity on what is possible there. So it's hard to draw the line, right? Like it's a lot of things that we see in sci-fi aren't strictly ruled out. Like the reason sci-fi works is because like one of the things that makes sci-fi so intriguing is that it's not most of it isn't barred by the laws of physics, or there are potential loopholes in physics that maybe some of these things could be real. Maybe we could travel faster than light. Maybe there's a way to do that. There's a proposal that there are particles that move faster than the speed of light. There are particles theorized to move reverse in time. Like there's so much about our universe that is puzzling us, and we don't really know how to measure those things yet, and therefore we don't know what the limits of those things are. And I guess that gives people like me a vast space to think about really weird things that really just don't matter. But it's not that I don't think that this matters, because I mean, obviously, finding life could be one of the most profound discoveries that could ever happen in all of the world. Like that understanding that we're not alone. That understanding is that we're no longer a unique test case. We would be one of two at that point, right? Like we would discover something else, and everything we know about life just makes it so fascinating. And what if? I mean, it's like it's kind of like wishing I had a long lost brother or something. Like it's kind of like along the same lines, right? Life is, I don't know. There's life. We want it to have meaning. We want it to mean more than just a bunch of random shit happened and we got farted out. Like, I think that's part of the human spirit in all this, right? The human mind just doesn't, it wants to make us more important than maybe we are. And, but in a way that, isn't that kind of what makes us important? Like, it, maybe we're important because we're the only things that can sit around and think about our self-importance. Maybe that is our importance. Maybe that is our value as a species to the universe. Why would that help the universe? I don't know how the universe works. I don't know why the universe created life, or why life ended up in the universe. I don't know why there's a universe. And and all of those questions just lead back to us trying to, like, we want that meaning. We want it all to mean, like, I think that's why we get into gods, right? Like, we want there to be something more so that it all has meaning. Well, we'd find more meaning just in another species, and learning what they culturally value, learning what goes on with them, learning their way of life could have a lot of benefits. Like, part of our understanding of psychology is that we have such a wide range of societal views that have been studied. And why do people do different things? Why do people live different ways? And we have all that information through the fact that we have different cultures, and that cultural exchange has given us the value, and that value is tremendous knowledge. Some of the knowledge, like independently, is discovered. Some of it is overlapping. There's a lot of things to it, but I think that would be one of the greatest things that could ever happen to us as a species, is running into somebody who actually has enough intelligence to actually exchange meaningful knowledge with us. Because we can't get that with animals, right? Like we don't have any meaningful exchange. Can we teach them to do neat things? Can we show them our perspective? Can we get them to learn things that we want? Sure, but do we ever let them like test us? Do we ever send volunteers down to the ocean to let octopuses run us through air mazes so that they can try to figure out what's going on? No, but we grab octopuses and we run them through water mazes and ask them to do insane. Like it's very interesting that we don't really have anything but each other to exchange these ideas with, right? And I guess that's one of the hopes of why it would be cool to have, to find aliens. But what is the practical reality of that? Why spend any time thinking about this? I don't know. Entertainment, I guess. This is I guess I find it entertaining to think about the possibilities. Like, I love the Fermi Paradox, and I love thinking about the different solutions that I've heard to the Fermi Paradox. And the Fermi Paradox is nothing more than if life is abundant, where is all the extraterrestrial life? And there's a lot of solutions. Like there's the hard steps problem, and so there is the theory that there's these hard steps that life has to go through, like abiogenesis being one of them. You actually have to spawn life from nothing. Then you have to cross the multicellular divide, which we're doing in labs now. We can go from single cell to multicell in labs now. So that one may not be such a hard step as we've thought for a long time, because we were too closed-minded to try reasonable methods like, I don't know, starving it of what it needs so it has to evolve. Turns out you do that and you can turn single cell organisms into multicellular organisms in just a few generations. It does not take long at all. All you have to do is put them under stress and they will respond to the stress. And it seems so obvious now that we know it, but before they were trying to make the conditions perfect. What would life need? And let's make those, and let's let life evolve in perfect conditions. And that was our theory. That's what we tested on. That's where we've been looking at abiogenesis from. That's where and what we're finding is it's the starvation situations or the difficult situations that drive evolution, right? That's what drives us to change. That's what makes the DNA change, or that's what stresses, cellular life to alter so that it can deal with new stresses. Without those stresses, there's no need for that. There's no need for evolution without stress. And so the hard stops model is interesting. Like, I don't know, I guess in my own thinking, I don't know, I think I have some different hard steps than I think what some of the mainstream hard steps would be. Like, one of my biggest hard steps is moving out of water to land. I have this suspicion that life works better in water. Water makes things able to, like, it can move things. It gives them a medium to float around in. It gives them neutral buoyancy. Now, don't get me wrong. There's microbial life that could be neutrally buoyant in the air. And so this isn't, it's not that it can't happen, but you're not likely to have a thick atmosphere before you have life, breaking free some of the gases that are in there. Like, carbon is it tends to be locked away with other stuff as solids and not as a gas. Oxygen likes reacting with just about anything. Having free oxygen in the air very good literally may be one of the hard steps of advanced life. If there's nothing, like, because we in our start we got lucky, right? We had plankton form. It was one of the earlier single cell, or one of the earlier microbial life forms, and it just saturated our environment with oxygen. It found a way to free oxygen from the water that it was swimming in as it processed in photosynthesis, and it just absorbed light, and part of its processing output was just oxygen, and that's how plant life started here. That's how plant life works here. It it takes in carbon dioxide, and that can be done from water. So carbon dioxide can exist in water. There are other ways to get oxygen out of water, but that's one of them. And so they process this carbon dioxide, and they keep the carbon because the carbon is what they use. Like, I mean, the carbon's what we make our cells out of, right? We use carbon for a huge portion of us is carbon. And so by utilizing that carbon, and the oxygen becomes a waste product of them, they now create free oxygen, which is extremely rare. Think about it. Oxygen reacts with everything. Like oxidization, fire, like everything that starts on fire is consuming oxygen. That pulls oxygen out of the air every time we see a fire. You and me and other animals, most animals, we respirate oxygen. We that's how we get our oxygen. And so I think one of the hard steps is probably this oxygen atmosphere. I think another one of the hard steps is probably moving on to land. I think that's going to be a real problem, because how would we even let's say we had our bodies and we were just little mermen, right? We had gills and shit, and we could just swim around in the water, but we still had our opposable thumb, or like gripping ability. Now, we have several animals that have this kind of thing. Like, we have talons. Like, I think birds have, like, their talons could be adapted to be finger and opposable thumb-like. So I don't think it's just, like, primates that have thumbs. There are other things that have this, and tentacles kind of can do some of this. Like there's a certain amount of dexterity that's been proven through, like, tentacles of, like octopuses and squids. The utility of that, the handiness of that, is definitely there. So could they develop tools? Could they, do things like that? Well, sure, but it's going to be a lot harder in a water environment, because everything reacts with water, right? Because part of the problem is we get oxidization from water, and part of that is because it's hydrogen and oxygen, and so the hydrogen can go free. And so that oxygen can attach to other things that it's more strongly attached to. And so then you end up with like free hydrogen, but it's, you've got things consuming that oxygen. And anyway, I don't know why I was talking about that. So that's going to be a weird one in there, but you have so anyway, the hard steps there, the oxygen, the coming up onto land, the opposable thumb, and then obviously tool building. Like, these are all things that we would need for tool building. Oh, right. I was talking about I see where I was going. The underwater, everything's just going to corrode. And you're going to have a harder time with construction. Think how hard it would be to swing. Think about trying to swing a hammer underwater. You'd have to solve the problem of how do you get energy transfer through such a dense fluid medium, right? Like, the air is still a fluid, if at least in terms of the way that we think about it in physics, or in materials. But like, air doesn't have the resistance water does. Water is dramatically more resistive, and it's due to its density, because it creates more friction because there's more particles to rub against as we try to move through it. And that would just be a problem. Like, we'd have to learn about hydrodynamics just to make tools that were sufficient. Now, could we do that? Could we, the truth is some of our earliest tools where we were just chipping rock. We were just chipping rock and creating sharp edges. Sure. Could we chop that and then have even our handles, like early axe handles, were narrowed in a way to where they were still somewhat aerodynamic. Maybe that would have been enough. Maybe just advancing that a little bit to a point, maybe there would be a way to use tools underwater. But I think that's one of the big problems, right? Like, how are you going to build a civilization underwater? So if there's a favoritism to life liking to form underwater first, and you have all your microbes in the water, and they may be creating an atmosphere, but you have to have, you're going to spend all of this time in the water before the atmosphere is even amenable to anything that could be roaming on it or giving us rise to a system that could work. And I just don't know that every species is going to make that step. Not every time life starts is free oxygen going to be, something that is let out there. I also got to wonder about just the other gases in the air. Like it's interesting because we have a lot of nitrogen, but once upon a time on the Earth, we had more oxygen than nitrogen, I do believe. Was like we had a period like when the dinosaurs roamed and when plants were huge, I guess the oxygen percentage was huge, and that was part of what supported all of that. It's also interesting. Actually, anyway, that's a whole nother evolutionary topic. It's worth looking up. There are people that think that maybe mankind was alive and kind of some of our evolution massively happened in that time, and that our bodies actually are tuned and they do much, much better in an environment where we have about double the pressure and about double the oxygen. And so I don't know, there are people doing weird research on our bodies that like we apparently like somebody who's not an athlete, if you put them in a chamber that has rather than about 21% oxygen, it has about 40% oxygen, and you double the pressure to 2 atmospheres of pressure, I guess the average person doesn't ever like wear out. They don't like exhaustion doesn't occur anymore. Respiratory exhaustion ends at that point. I was really fascinated. I didn't get too deep into it. Maybe I'm misunderstanding it. Maybe it's just that it was so phenomenally long. It was impressive, or anyway, it was statistically significant what they were getting out of that. And some people think it might have been that period in our history. And so it's interesting to wonder what evolved because of that massive change for a while, what evolved because of that. But also, like, could those evolutions have happened without it? Could we even be here without these really wild things that have happened? So as we search for life out there, we have to think about the conditions we've had on Earth and how likely those conditions are. What is the likelihood that that's going to happen elsewhere? And it starts adding a whole bunch of things that, while not any individual one is like super low probability, like maybe 1 out of 10 species that makes it to a certain stage can actually advance to the next hard step. Okay, so 10% go forward, that's fine. But to get past 2, you're now at roughly 1%. Now, that's not how statistics work, but roughly. And each step you go up, even if it's only a 10% of species make it past that step, you're still talking after just 8 or 10 hard steps, you're talking about 1 in tens of hundreds or tens of millions of chances. And even though we estimate that there may be 2 trillion galaxies out there with an average of about 2 trillion stars, and that the average star may have 3 to 5 planets that we know about, and it probably is more than that, at some point, the math says, well, there's got to be another one out there, right? Like 2 trillion squared seems like a big enough number. There's got to be other intelligent life out there. I don't know. Why haven't we seen signs of it? And I guess there's another solution to the Fermi Paradox. We're just early. Maybe we are special. See, that's the problem. Like when we're trying to statistically analyze things, we try to exclude ourselves from like the statistically unlikely things, because that creates the assumption that we're special, which we like to do. And so it's kind of a bias that we have. And we insert that all over in our science, and we got to be really careful about that. But on the other hand, what are we gaining by going so far out of our way to say we're not special? Because if we're looking out there and we've got 2 trillion squared times number of planets per sun, if that's really what's out there in the universe, it's just hard to imagine that there's this condition where that isn't met, where there isn't other life out there. And so since we don't observe other life, maybe we are early, we're at the party first, or we're in like the earliest like grouping. So maybe all of intelligent life right now is just getting into the civilization phase, but most of what we can see are thousands of light years away. It's 1,000 years before we'll be able to detect those civilizations if they rise at the same time we do. And it gets worse every couple hundred years behind us. They are, and just the technology that we'd be able to measure is that much more delay in our ability to detect them. Even a civilization that has been, shooting off electromagnetic waves into space on their own, and various other communications that they've been beaming out into space. Well, it's still gonna take thousands of years for those signals to hit us. So 500, 1,000 years ahead of us isn't really all that meaningful. We wouldn't be able to see it and detect it yet anyway. And that's what would happen if we were kind of in the first batch of life, like if we were early. And so I think there's a lot of credibility to that. I also think that the Grabby aliens theory, if you've ever heard of that, is interesting, and I think it also supports. I think it's an explanation as to why we are early, and it's basically a statistical analysis that assumes life is always going to be Grabby like we are. Like, it's always going to want more land. It's always going to look to grow. It's always going to look to spread. And the nature of life on Earth is that's absolutely true. All life here seems to try to relentlessly spread. Literally every time we take, something out of its environment, we tend to find out it's an invasive species. And if it happens to have a skill set that nothing in the new environment can hold back, then it just kind of takes over and starts killing everything else because it has its invasive properties and its way of killing plants, and nothing there has a means to fight back like it would have had in its native environment, right? Like when something grows in a native environment, an enemy to it naturally crops up, and then that enemy feasts on it, and you get this, this ebb and flow of what's like dominant in the world. And so if that's our observation of pretty much how all life on Earth works, what's to say it wouldn't work that way somewhere else? Like, the truth of the matter is if life comes from abiogenesis, nothing spontaneously gathers until it emerges into something self-replicating, and then that self-replicating starts advancing, gaining cells, making organs and organelles. Like, it's going through all that process, and the whole time it needs more resources to feed that, and it wants to continue to grow. It wants to create more of whatever it is, and that's pretty much the purpose of it, is that it is just trying to gather resources to reproduce. And that's all life's ever been. Why would alien life be any different than that? Because it's still going to have to have come from abiogenesis, I guess. I mean, I don't know. Maybe there are races out there that they came through abiogenesis. Then maybe they designed life that didn't have this weird Grabby property, if that's possible. Maybe they lab grew something that's grown something, got rid of the others, and maybe that's a way to circumvent this Grabby problem of life. But from what I can tell, life has just got this Grabby nature to it. And if that's true, so the reason that it's important to understand that for the Grabby aliens theory is because it explains why we're early. Or it explains why it's likely that we're special enough that we can declare ourselves early. And that assumption is that when a civilization rises to the point that it can continue to find a new way to grab land, it's going to do that. We crossed oceans and started taking land from people on the other side of the ocean. Like, that's what we did when we started getting to the point that we could build boats. So what are we going to do when we get to the point we can build spaceships? Well, we're going to go put flags on the moon and Mars, and we're going to go out and claim Jupiter, and we're going to have outposts and, well, not Jupiter. Like, I don't know. I don't think anything can survive on Jupiter. Just gas. Like, probably, like, I don't know. I don't know if human life could do anything there. But Pluto, like, we just put an outpost on Pluto. This is the last rest stop before leaving the solar system. I don't know. Maybe we'll find some rocks out there in the Kuiper Belt, and we'll put some outposts out there, and then we'll start going off into the stars. But we're literally in the place of civilization. We're talking about doing this. We literally have people spending vast resources on trying to get to Mars, get people to Mars. They even phrase it as backing up civilization. If we have civilization on another planet, then no matter what happens on Earth, we've backed up the only thing that we know to be truly intelligent and technologically advanced. Like, doesn't it seem worth backing that up? I mean, we back up our phone pictures of, like, when we snapped a picture of, like, somebody's license plate that cut us off, and we have that picture in our fucking phone for like 9 years until we finally fucking forget what it is and delete it because we don't know what it is. We've all been there, and we have the backup of that goddamn shit, but we don't have a backup of us. I mean, I guess we got the 1 to 3 people floating around in the space station at any one given point, but I don't think we're going to repopulate from 3 people that have no means to get back down to us if we end here. Like, how are they going to get back? Like, it's kind of a lost cause at that point. They're just going to die in space if we go down up here to go down while they're up there. So that's no backup, and it's crazy, but that's where I think it's possible that we are early. And then like even further, think about how fast once we get out there. So maybe for now, okay, it's going to take us another couple decades to get this Mars plan going. But once we do it once, the second time is going to go a lot easier. It ain't going to be a 20-year deal for the next one. It's going to be, okay, here's the systematic ways that we know we can make this better now that we know what we can handle. And we're going to be able to go out and we're going to start experimenting with terraforming. We're going to send scouting things to plant microbes to get life started for us. And we're just going to have automation sending out things in front of us to get things ready as we go. And what's interesting about that, if you come up with a plan to where your civilization starts diverting its resources into spreading and people want to go and spread and find new things, and we have all of this vast place of unclaimed space, people are just going to sign up to, okay, I'll spend the next 10 years getting to a planet that I can just have myself. I mean, they're going to be people that want to do that. They're going to be like, I mean, I'm the kind of person that I talk about, I want to make an intentional community. You're telling me that if I was given the opportunity that me and 30 or 40 other like-minded people that wanted to live the way that we want, we could go out there and we could live our society any fucking way we wanted. Like, I'm not into consumerism. I'm not into being a grabby person. I'm into trying to live within our means and trying to be responsible stewards of the environment that we have. I'm all for all of those concepts. But you give me that option, I'm not sure I'm not taking it. Even though I don't know, maybe it's not the most responsible thing, but how is it? I mean, would it be irresponsible? I don't know. Anyway, there's ethical questions to that I guess I'm not prepared to answer today. That's a completely different thing. And so I guess my problem is that all that I can see means that we're probably not going to find aliens anytime soon. We might eventually find some techno-signatures, and if we're extremely lucky, we might find that in our lifetime. But I doubt we'll ever find more than a couple techno-signatures by the time in a lifetime like mine. I just don't see the evidence for that. If there was somebody so far ahead of us that we were already getting their signatures, we've got so many radio telescopes pointing at the sky looking for things like repeating patterned transmissions. I can't imagine that we would have heard nothing. Like, we watch so much with so many telescopes. So many people are doing so much work in areas like this because we're learning so much other things. Like, it's not just about the search for life. But I'm just thinking, if there was intelligent life out there communicating in the radio frequency range, you're going to have a hard time convincing me that that's not going on, or that is going on. I just don't see the evidence of it. And so then what happens is you have to balance that with the fact that, okay, so we've talked about the Fermi Paradox, but what if the Fermi Paradox is a dumb question? What if the answer to the Fermi Paradox is that it's not a valid question? Because the question supposes that we don't know anything about aliens and that we don't have any contact or evidence of them. But this becomes a problem with like the state of the world as it is, because we have governments that will openly say that they have tracked things like UFOs. They have done this. There are people like Bob Lazar is a really interesting story. He's a man. He said he worked at Area 51. There seems to be some evidence that maybe his education and work history before his time working there was, I don't know, covered up, erased, like, I don't know, some kind of pressure to hide that information. Um, and the man's never profited off of his story. He's never let anybody pay him for appearances in documentaries or the couple of like interviews that he's given. He won't take money for it. He won't even allow them to pay his like travel expenses to like, come to their interviews because he doesn't want to look like he's profiting off of this. And he doesn't talk about it. He refuses most interviews. He's just a private man that wants to be left alone. And he really only shared his story because he thought his life is in danger. At least that's the story we got. I think it was the late 80s when he first came out with it. And he thought he was in trouble because he took some buddies out to go see UFOs that he worked on flying. I guess there were certain nights that they'd go out and they'd fly, and there were like roads that he knew you'd be able to see it from, and he'd take his friends out there, and he got caught. And he thought his life was in danger because he slipped secrets. At least that's the what I understand the story is. That's how I understand how he got involved. But it turns out all these crazy things that he said, Element 115, he talked about weird like biometric like hand readers that, like, I don't know, measured things in your hand or something. People mocked him and said that technology didn't exist. And here years later, we have found out that this was a technology that has been used in most of the major, like United States, engineering developers, your aerospace people like McDonnell Douglas that used to be, or the Skunk Works, or like all these places. It come to find out they had been using these as a security mechanism for years. And he talked about them. Nobody believed him. And then pictures and information about this reader started coming out because I guess it got decommissioned, declassified, and it's no longer a big secret thing. And we've got better things to do security with now anyway. So it kind of proved him right. He was out talking about technology that was pretty elite, pretty need to know type stuff. And he said it existed. He said it was part of his life. Now, he never claimed to see an alien. All he claimed is he worked on a propulsion system, and for a couple of times, he's had to get into a UFO-like craft. He said it seemed like it was built more for somebody that was a child or a very small person, and it didn't look like anything he knew man to design. He didn't say, I don't know that he ever directly said it was alien. I don't think he thinks it's our technology, but he's very careful about how he speaks about it. And so the problem is that we hear stories like this. Now, is he telling the truth? I don't know. He's got a convincing story. The fact that he doesn't profit off of it, the fact that he has his own successful business doing something else. It's not like he's a guy that runs around following UFO tours. Like, he really behaves like a guy who got caught up in something, didn't see a choice but to go public to protect himself. And now he's got this hassle following him his whole life. And that's a weird way to behave if you're making something up. That's a weird way to behave for making stuff up. But I guess if you're making it up, you want the attention and you're trying to make it look like that's not what it is, I guess you'd act that way. I mean, I don't know. Like, I don't know. I don't know. I'm not saying the story's right. I'm saying it's interesting, though. It's worth looking into. If you're interested in this subject, definitely look up Bob Lazar. I think there's a couple of documentaries about him. I think Joe Rogan did an interview with him one time. Interesting guy. And the problem I have with that is you have people like that have such a credible story like that. While most governments have a hard line, there is no UFOs, we're not dealing with aliens, yada, yada, yada. Now, the problem is that we know our government lies to us. They do it all the time, and they keep secrets from us all the time. Secrets is more common than lying, but they're not above lying. I've talked about some of the lies, and like, even I've talked before in videos about our government like putting disinformation about UFO stuff out there on purpose. And you got to wonder what that's about. Why is the government trying to convince us that there are aliens? And so all of that becomes a really complex like topping on it, because it muddies the water so much to have the government saying out both sides of its mouth, of course, aliens aren't real. And of course, we know everything there is to know about the aliens visiting us. And you hear both of these things, and they're both being sourced from the government. And so literally they both can't be true. And so what? We just assume that they're telling us there's no aliens, so there is none? Well, of course they'd hide any threat from us. They don't tell us when, like, we're at heightened alert because of, like, foreign powers and whatnot. Why would they tell us about aliens? They just hide that from us. They don't trust us enough. They think we'll panic. I don't know. Maybe they're right. Maybe we would all mass panic if, big tentacled alien landed on the White House lawn. I don't know. Maybe we would all freak out. I mean, but I don't know. And that's what makes the topic so interesting, is there's enough there that allows it to be possible. And there's even weird stuff like the way government misinformation works that makes it seem more likely. But what is the truth? Man has always seen what they wanted to see in everything. And I don't know, just because a guy like Bob Lazar was asked to reverse engineer a system doesn't mean he understood what the system was. That doesn't mean it was gravity based. It doesn't, like there's a lot of things that could be going on in his story that are different than aliens. Could it be that they found something that had anti-gravitation properties in a foreign like powers arsenal, and we were reverse engineering study that? That's an entirely possible way to go. And what, like, are there certain people that might be able to develop technology like that are smaller people? Well, I don't know. There's a lot of, like, I mean, historically we look at Asian people as being smaller in stature than human. Could it be that, a guy like Bob Lazar, who I think he's over 6 foot, I'm 6 foot, and I think everything's built like for children, because I'm too, like, look, everything's built for people that are like 5'7", 5'8". It sucks being 6 foot. Like, go to an amusement park. The way that like, you got to like compress your spines to fit in the little seats and shit. And everything's made for children. And well, everything's made to be as efficiently sized as possible, because, the more sardines you can pack in the can, the more you make per thing. And it's all about efficiency and profit. But like, when you have somebody like me that's a larger size, that's 6 foot tall, like I can't sit on a plane without, like, my knees will hurt for 2 days when I go on a couple hour plane ride, because I literally do not have enough room. My knees are against the seat in front of me, and there's nothing I can do about that. There literally just isn't enough room sometimes in these seats. And so would I walk into a spaceship that was made by and for, I don't know, Asian, like healthy Asian sized people that aren't also the belly that I've got? Would I get into a craft made for them and go, oh yeah, this is made for a child? Sure, why not? So could this be a Chinese device that has some kind of anti-gravitational propulsion system that he was studying? It has nothing to do with aliens. There's plenty of possibilities that don't have to invoke aliens. So Bob Lazar could be telling the truth, and it has nothing to do with aliens. Then again, that means that we'd have to face the possibility that we do have gravity manipulation going on, which that's terrifying if that's in our hands. That technology just seems like it would be absurdly powerful if we could control whatever it is that gravity is. The understanding it would take just to manage a system like that, like understanding, we don't understand gravity enough to make a system that is gravitationally based. At least I don't think. And I think that's the assumption that, like, you hear out of Bob Lazar, is he's just like, I just don't think mankind's here. And he's an aerospace engineer, right? Like, he's a dude trained in that. And he's like, I don't think we can do this. I don't even, like, he talks about how he just didn't understand enough to even understand what it was doing. They were trying to reverse engineer something that was so far ahead of them, they didn't know where to start. It'd be like a caveman trying to figure out how my cell phone works. Like, it's just not happening. You just don't know enough to know what you need to know to do it. The caveman's going to come up, look at it, smash it with a rock, and see all the shit fall out. It never works again. Like, it's over. Like, it's like that's what we're doing with technology like this. It's that far over our heads in some of these cases, I'm thinking. And so maybe that's the deal breaker, right? Maybe we can't manipulate gravity like that. Maybe that does make it all bullshit. But I don't know. I really don't know. And I love how interesting it is. And then there's the video that you see out there. There's so many things that happen. We got radar. We got all kinds of evidence of weird shit. Now, weird shit does not mean it's aliens. We got all kinds of evidence of weird shit, and everybody's like, yeah, it's nothing. Don't worry about it. What kind of answer is that, man? Like, ball lightning was probably another one of those things that got, this must be aliens, because ball lightning's weird. It's very strange. Apparently, it can actually exist for a few seconds sometimes, particularly around railroad tracks. I wonder if it happens more on like high power lines or whatnot, because I don't know. I just don't know what it would be about railroad tracks that would make ball lightning more likely, if not for, static or electromagnetic fields, which you'd have on power lines too. But we don't know that much about ball lightning. And one of the reasons is it's hard to predict where it's going to be or when you're going to see it. So studying ball lightning is a real problem. But I wouldn't say that there's nothing to be learned from ball lightning. Understanding why a little ball of lightning will just start floating down some train tracks, understanding how and why that happens, I don't know. That seems like that could be useful in some way. I don't know why, or I don't know what for yet, but being able to control lightning and just have little balls of it, like, I don't know. It just seems like we could use that. We can use things like Tesla coils. What if we could modify a Tesla coil to have ball lightning, and we could find an efficient way to, transfer energy through high resistance mediums like air? I just don't know. I'm not saying that we would discover that. I'm just saying I think ball lightning is worth discovering. But ball lightning is one of the excuses why people say we shouldn't study this stuff, because, well, a lot of it is just ball lightning. We know what ball lightning it is. We know that it's a natural phenomenon, and we know it's not aliens, so there's no point studying this. Well, I just disagree wholesale with that idea. Just because it's not aliens, just because it's more evidence that we're not being visited by aliens, doesn't mean that there's not something to be learned from that. And so I think ufology at a wider level, or even when the government tells us we have no interest in studying UFOs, yada, yada, yada. Well, the reason we catch them lying over and over is because, of course, it's worth studying. Anything in our skies that we don't understand is worth trying to figure out, because it might be something that is a threat. It might be something that, like ball lightning, could cause fires, and maybe we can find a way to control this. Maybe there's phenomenon that we can learn from. Maybe, I don't know. I don't know why anybody would think, oh, just because it's an aerial phenomenon, we shouldn't study it. And just because it's connected with, ufology and people that push a narrative that they can't prove, just because those people exist doesn't mean that the phenomenon itself isn't worth studying. I guess it just frustrates me the way that, I guess it frustrates me that this is still a laughable, like, this is something we would laugh at somebody for having. Like, I don't agree with the idea of laughing at somebody for believing in aliens. I think the evidence is there. There probably are aliens. Are there technologically advanced aliens that could give us any kind of competition in our level of understanding? I don't know. Probably. But we're probably not going to contact them in our lifetimes. Like, it just, the distances are too far. And like, unless we figure out like warp drive technology in a couple of years, it just, I don't see it happening. And I just don't, there's a lot of people that don't even know if warp drives are real. We've got some theories, but we just don't really understand the nature of space, like empty space. We don't understand the way that space can be manipulated and stretched and deformed enough to know if we could deform space into warp technology. We don't know. And that's one of the exciting things, right? Because we don't know, there are people that are working on it. There are people researching things that could lead to this, or researching potential avenues to get there, or learn enough to get there. Because it is within the realm of possibilities. And of course, it would be amazing if we could warp drive and we could just go somewhere and, I don't know, sit just orbiting a black hole, studying a black hole from right there. Like, what could we learn with that? I don't know. Maybe it'd be a waste of time. Maybe we wouldn't learn anything more than what we can learn by observing and theorizing. I don't know. It would be cool though to go and, I don't know, like, explore the universe like that. And I don't know. So anyway, I guess that's some thoughts that I have on aliens. I guess this isn't really that much of a useful topic. It's just something I enjoy thinking about. So I figured I'd sit down and think it through with you. Well, anyway, with that, until next time, be well.